Have you ever had that feeling at work? You know? That invisible friction where everything just feels harder than it should be? It turns out that feeling isn't about your colleagues or your boss. It's about something much deeper, the actual design of your company. Let's dive in.
Does this hit a little too close to home? I bet it does. It's a quote from an employee, but really, it's a feeling we've all had, right? That feeling of doing work that just evaporates. Pouring hours into a report that you know is just going to disappear into some digital folder. This isn't just a you problem. It's a symptom of a much bigger organizational sickness.
And hey, let's put a number on that frustration. 11.3 hours. According to one analysis, that's how much time the average employee spends in meetings every single week. Think about that. That's almost a day and a half of your week gone just trying to coordinate things. That's a huge cost, and it's a direct result of a clunky system.
So all this wasted time, the pointless reports, the meeting after meeting after meeting, it's not random. It's not just bad luck. There's a name for it. A structure tax. It's the hidden price your company pays day in and day out because its org chart, its fundamental design, just doesn't fit the work you're actually trying to do anymore.
And this is so important. We love to blame people, don't we? We say folks are slow or that there are communication issues. But what if the problem isn't the people at all? What if your talented, motivated colleagues are stuck inside a system that's designed to slow them down? The real bottleneck might just be the structure itself.
Check this number out. It really puts the scale of this problem into perspective. Research from BCG found that since 1970, the complexity of the business world has gone up about 6 times. Okay, makes sense. But our internal complicatedness, all the layers, the rules, the processes, that has exploded by 35 times. We've tried to solve external complexity by making our own internal worlds a complete maze.
And what does that maze actually look like in the real world? Well, get this. One global financial firm took 127 days and 17 different signatures to approve one single mid-sized investment. That delay, that's what they call decision latency, and it's a huge part of the structure tax. By the time they finally said yes, you can bet their competitors had already eaten their lunch.
Remember that quote from the beginning about the reports nobody reads? Well, it's not just a feeling. The data backs it up. In a lot of big companies, managers spend a staggering 40% of their time just on reporting. That is 2 full days a week, creating documents that are really just there to feed the bureaucracy, not the business.
So, there's a formal name for this whole mess, structural debt. It's a lot like technical debt in software. These are design choices that probably made perfect sense back in the day, like creating separate departments for efficiency or hierarchies for control. But now, they'd become this incredible drag on the company, actively stopping you from getting things done. So, where does all this debt pile up? Well, let's look at the number one culprit, the most common source of this pain, the matrix organization. It came on the scene back in the 70s to try and manage complexity, and for so many companies, it's still the default setting.
I mean, you know this chart. We've all seen it. The traditional pyramid. It was built for a totally different world, right? An era that was stable, predictable, where control from the top was everything. It's logical, it's orderly, but it was absolutely not designed for the kind of speed and agility you need to survive today.
On paper, the matrix sounds brilliant, doesn't it? It's supposed to give you the best of both worlds. You get deep expertise from your functional teams, but you can also focus on specific projects. The problem is, in reality, it creates this paradox. It breaks the most simple rule of work. Have one boss. And when you do that, you get chaos, confusion, and a ton of conflict.
And this data just reveals a massive disconnect. When researchers asked mid-level managers about their biggest challenges, 87% of them said unclear roles and responsibilities. 87%. But when they asked the top-level executives, only 23%. The leaders designing the maze are completely insulated from how confusing it is for the people actually trying to navigate it every day.
So this structural mess isn't just an abstract problem on a whiteboard. No, it has a profound, real, and damaging effect on the people who have to live inside the system.
And that brings us to this idea of team cognitive load. Think of it like the RAM on your computer. It's the amount of mental energy your team has to spend just dealing with the organization, figuring out who to talk to, managing politics, sitting in those alignment meetings. And just like a computer, when the system demands more than the team's capacity, it doesn't just slow down. it crashes. And the consequence of that crash is severe. Research found a 76% correlation between teams with high cognitive load and rates of employee burnout. Let me say that again. Our overly complicated org charts are literally burning out our best people.
I love this analogy from the research. Just think about it. We would never, ever run our computer servers at 100% capacity all the time. We build in backup systems, we plan for spikes in traffic, and yet, we design our organizations as if human beings can operate at peak mental capacity 24/7 with absolutely no relief. It's madness.
Okay, so if the traditional pyramid is broken, what's the alternative? Well, there are some really pioneering companies out there that are trying something completely different, basically throwing the pyramid out the window.
So on the one hand, you have the classic hierarchy we all know, and on the other, you have something like a flat organization. The biggest difference here is really about power. Flat structures try to push decision-making down to the people who are closest to the action. This creates teams that are way more flexible and can adapt much, much faster.
And this is not just some academic theory, you know. Real companies are doing this. Valve, the video game giant, has almost no managers at all. The Morningstar Company, a tomato processor, uses contracts between peers instead of having bosses. Even a huge company like Bayer has started cutting out layers of middle management to let its teams self-organize. Now, look, these models are not a magic fix. They take a ton of trust and discipline, but they prove that another way is possible.
And what's fascinating is that these design choices aren't just about corporate profits. They can be geopolitical. For instance, one analysis argues that when a country like China adopted more market-based structures, it wasn't some ideological failure. It was a pragmatic choice. To compete on the world stage, they had to adopt the organizational playbooks of their rivals. It's a powerful reminder that these structures are always a response to the world around them.
So we've talked about the hidden tax, the structural debt, and the very real human cost of these outdated designs. It's time to bring it all home.
Here's the one thing I really want you to take away from all this. Companies spend a fortune on strategy, on technology, on hiring the best people. But the org chart, the company's actual operating system, is often just ignored, treated like it's set in stone. But it's not. It is an active, living thing that is either helping your strategy or quietly strangling it to death.
So I'll leave you with this question. The next time you're sitting in a meeting that feels pointless, or you're waiting weeks for a simple yes or no, don't just sigh and accept it. Ask yourself, what is the structure tax we're paying right now? And what amazing things could we do if we didn't have to pay it at all?